Well, I'm back from my business trip and got the deck stripped off and all the inner framework. We are going to get ready here to start glassing the inside of the boat. One of the only changes I did is I'm going to add some wood to the inside of the transom, just so it has a stronger anchor point for the motor bracket, bottom bolts, and then it will also get that little shelf off the bottom that could collect water. It'd be big trouble if I start collecting water up that high underneath the covered deck. So that's where we're at. Let's go start mixing some polyester this time. We're going to save the leftover epoxy for the top. We're going to do the inside in polyester resin. Hello. Well, this morning we finished filling in all the seams and screw heads with some thickened resin. I went through and gave it a quick sanding to knock down all the really high spots. I'm not worried about this first off being perfectly smooth because this is a hunting boat, so I don't need to have this nice smooth glass finish. And second off, the chopped strand net seems to work around imperfections fairly well. What we are going to do is I'm going to run a strip right down the center here, and that should cover up to these seam areas out here. Both of these I believe should be covered by the mat. If for some reason it's not, then I'm going to run it up one side and come up the side of the boat here just a little bit and then out to the middle, then do the same to the other side. Then we'll fill in along the top edge with a strip. I just want to make sure that these seams right here on both sides are covered with mat, that we don't have a seam at that point. So I'm going to go grab my roll of mat, I'm going to roll it out. I think when I do it, I'm going to run it to the back, and then I'm going to cut it so it goes up the sides here and try just to fill it in down to the sump back there, and then we'll finish doing all the glass work inside the sump and then up this back part here separately. So I'm going to go get the roll of glass and get started on it. I'll get back to you once I get it rolled out and start doing some of the trimming on it to make it fit. Well, as you can see, I have the roll of mat in the boat, and it is exactly the width of that center section. So what we're going to do is I need to measure the mat, see how far I can go up the sides. We'll run it partially up the sides, or if it's wide enough, we'll run it all the way up the sides and then down along the bottom of the boat and just have a seam right down the center. We'll have to do some creative cutting to get it to go up into these corners on both ends, but I'll show you how we do that. It's not as difficult as it sounds. And with mat, if you cut too much out, you just put some back in. It's one of the few things with fiberglassing where you can just add back in extra piece you cut out, and it should act pretty much the same as the solid piece. We weren't quite wide enough to make it fully from one side to the other, as you can tell by the sump back here where the glass came up. And instead of leaving a 4-inch strip on either end, I decided I would bring this out into the center, and then we'll run a strip that overlaps by about a foot on either side down the center to enclose the center section. We'll put that on after we get the two side sections on. As for the corners, what we did, get this piece out here first, we just ran it up into the corner, cut down. This one we cut down a little bit too far, which that's okay. Then we had a big piece here that flapped over the side. When we laid that one back in, we were sticking way up here and out over here. So we just trimmed it across the top here, trimmed it down so we let the middle overlap, and then I took and cut a little triangular piece off of the leftover, and we'll use that to go over in the corner to make the corner a little bit stronger. Especially in the back of the boat here, since this is the direction that the water is going to be coming when it drains out. I want to make sure that there's no little pinholes in the corner for the water to get down to the wood. And then we did the exact same thing up in the front corner. Then after we got that all laid out, I just slowly started doing the same thing down here, cutting out sections. We cut out a square section here, notched it up and in, so now we can fold this guy down here, this guy down here. I'm not worried about this gap in there right now. We'll take care of that when we reglass this whole sump on its own. And the same thing here, we got a little overlay right here. So I'm going to roll out the other side real quick just to get the piece rolled out, and I'll cut it off, and then I'm just going to roll it back up and let it sit to the side, and we'll get some resin on this side, get that to start kicking off, and then while that's going, we'll do this side of the boat, because it'll be far enough away from the seam I won't have to worry about getting it in the wet resin. Well, we have a layer of chop strand glassed in, a little under one half of the boat. I think I went through almost 2 gallons of resin for that, so I have to see how much resin I got left in the basement. I think I only have 1 more gallon, and I only have, well, 3/4 of a gallon sitting in there. So some of it I was a little heavy-handed on the resin. I was getting used to putting it down again. You can also see we got some fuzzy stuff sticking up in some spaces. That'll get sanded off once it dries. So we got the other roll of chop strand laying there for this side. But right now I'm going to go take a resin inventory, and I may have to go the ultra cheap route and go buy some of the Bondo polyester resin from Home Depot for 3 times the amount of cost to get it from a fiberglass supply house. But beggars can't be choosers. So that is where we are at right now, and I'll get back with you when I figure out what I'm doing with the rest of it, if I have enough resin. Okay, let's see if we can get this set up right so you can actually see me doing one of these corners. So what I did is I tucked this glass in, got the layout flat in this direction, all the extra up over here. And all we're going to do is go down this corner with the scissors till we get down to the inside corner. So now what you have is this piece will lay nice and flat in here. You just flip this guy around, and now I'll start laying flat up in this direction. Then what you do is you go along the top here, cut all this excess off. Then I take this little corner piece right here, so I cut it like a triangle. It gets tucked down in the inside corner there. So, got one other small piece. Don't need all this extra out here, so I just trim this down that way. And you could have used this triangular piece, but I had a piece over there I could easily cut off. And that is how you get the corner set up. Well, here's a real brief update. You can see a little white patch back there. That is where I ran out of resin. I sort of went at it from both directions because I wanted to use the stuff that I knew how it was going to harden when I did the back corner area, because that could be an area where water could pool depending on how the boat is sitting. So I wanted to make sure I put what I consider good resin in there. I'm going to run up to Home Depot, get some of the Bondo resin. Hopefully they have 2 gallons in stock, and that should be enough to run a strip up the center here. I will probably overlap 6 to 8 inches on each side when I run the center strip. So it depends on if they have 1 or 2 gallons. If they have 1 gallon, I'm going to only overlap by maybe a ½ inch. If they got 2 gallons of it, I'm going to overlap by about 6 to 8 inches on each side. So there's all the killed cans of resin. The rusty one was one I had sitting in the sea ray with a little bit of old stuff in it. I used that up. And then I had 3 full gallons and 1 partial gallon left. So that is the current update. Time to head to Home Depot. Okay, let's see if you can figure out where the cheap-ass Bondo resin is. It's that brown, cruddy looking spot right there. I'm hoping that it'll work okay. I'm just going to run this guy up the center here, and then butt up against that another piece to go down to there, and then we will be done with the main part of glassing the interior. All I'll have left to do is the inside of the sump in the back there, and that little inner part of the transom. So that's what we have left to do for here. Okay, we are done glassing in the hull. Ended up going through a little over 4 gallons of the good resin, and to actually just finish the center strip I needed 1 gallon and like a pint of the cheap Bondo resin. And I use cheap loosely because that stuff is $35 a gallon as opposed to $20 a gallon when I get it at the semi-local place, but I wasn't going to drive 3 hours to get resin today. That was one way. But the one benefit of the Bondo resin is it has finishing wax in it. My original plan was to glass the inside of the boat with just standard laminating resin, and then, like I've done in other times, I'd shoot over it with paint the next day and use that as the cover, sealer, finishing agent on top. Since I had damn near a full gallon of the Bondo resin left, I went back over and put a layer over the entire boat, which you can see because it looks shiny, with that finishing resin. So what that'll do is that will allow the resin to completely cure tack-free. Since it's going to be doing that, I'm not going to worry about shooting the boat with paint right away. I will just continue on with putting the motor bracket and the deck and the blind back on, and then when I finally decide I want to shoot it with paint, I'll just wash it out real good, and I'll just have to lay down to do underneath, and I'll just spray underneath. Don't know if I'm going to do the underside or not with paint, because there's really no need for it to be painted other than make it look pretty. I might just paint the center strip, just because that's the part that's exposed when you're hunting. I don't need a nice light colored wood shining through when I'm trying to hide in a duck boat. I'd rather have the interior of the duck boat dark, so I'll probably spray paint the center section black. That's all I have for right now. I'm going to move on to getting everything set to put the motor bracket back on. As soon as that resin that's on the section of 2x12 in the center there is pretty much tack free, I'll re-drill the holes through from the back side to fill those in, to be able to put the screws all the way through. Well, it's now dark outside. I put a quick layer of glass over the outside of the motor pod. That way the bottom side will be done. I just have to reinforce the corners here a little bit and do the diagonals going up. And then the only thing I'll have to actually do upside down is the tabbing to tab the bottom edge here into the bottom of the boat. So the rest of it, then I can work in the upright position. So hopefully I don't get too heavy of a dew tonight, because this is just outside the canopy, so we'll get a little damp. But I don't think we're supposed to get that much of a dew. So boat still looks the same as it did before. Glassed motor bracket. Calling it a night. Time to go eat some dinner.